So I think, in my personal experience, my focus is, I think there are 7 areas you got to master to have an extraordinary life. And your enterprise or your business or career is only one of them. I believe number 1 is your physical body. If you look at this area of your life, when your physical body does not have the energy, the strength, the health, the vitality, the quality of your life disappears. So, the perfect example is you look over at, someone who's incredibly successful in business. Let's look at a Forbes, Malcolm Forbes. What an unbelievable man, and what he built and what he generated, Forbes magazine. How much money did he leave when he died? All of it, right? Every penny. So richest man in the graveyard is not your goal, or richest woman in the graveyard. So I'm just going to say to you, if you're thinking about the quality of your life, if this area isn't strong, you got problems. Give yourself a score right now so you're honest, 0 to 10. 10 is where you really want to be. By the way, for some people, 10 is they got washboard abs and everything else. For somebody else, 10 is they got the energy to burn. That's what life is for them. You don't have to have a perfect body. It's not somebody else's idea of 10. Plus, what's a 10 for you physically at different stages of life might be different, right? I mean, what's a 10 at 20 might be a different 10 at 50. So this is not my standard. Just for a moment, if you're going to have a great life, here's how you know what a great life is. You got to know where you are and where you want to be. A map is worthless if you know where you want to go, but you don't know where you are. So let's start with our life. Physical body, where are you 0 to 10 on your terms, whatever 10 is today? Right? And you might say, Tony, I don't want to be a 10. I want to be an 8 in that area. I'm not here to tell you what's right for you. I'm here to have you tell yourself what's right for you. So what is it? What's the second area of mastery? Emotion and meaning. I have a friend who sold his business for more than $1 billion in net profit to himself. How euphoric do you think he was when he sold the business? What would you say, 0 to 10? 20, right? He's telling me, I built this business over 25 years. I sold this business. I made $1 billion, and he was just out of his mind. 3 months later, and I predicted this to people around him, I knew he'd be miserable. Now, why would he be miserable? Because most people think that I want to make enough money so I never work again. Now, I did this also. When I was young, my goal was to make enough money to retire. And at 24 years old, I made the money I thought it would take to retire, because based on that lifestyle, I could, right? It was what I thought was an unbelievable lifestyle. And I did the same thing. This is why I knew what happened to my friend on a smaller scale, but it was the same thing for me. I never had to work again as long as I lived. I had enough money without ever working to cover my entire lifestyle. So I went around, I went to beaches, I went to islands, I did all these cool things. I was never into alcohol. I started to drink because I was bored. I chased girls, I did all kinds of very fascinating things, but nothing really juiced me. It gave me pleasure, but not fulfillment, right? So what you think is going to make you happy may not make you happy. Then think about, what is your level of mastery of human emotion and meaning? Do you come up with a meaning? Do you focus on what you're missing out on, or what you can still get? Do you make it the end or the beginning? What do you do? If you had to write down a list of emotions that you live consistently, would you say that the majority of them are uplifting, creative, grateful, or would you say the majority of them right now in your life currently are more stressful, more frustrated with people or performance, more overwhelmed, more concerned, or even depressed or sad. And it may change in different areas of your life. Like, wow, you feel really confident in the business, but in your intimate life, oh my God. Or you're so worried about your kids. You follow me? So where would you say your center of gravity is emotionally on a 0 to 10 scale? 10 is you live in the uplifted part of life. Everybody has challenges, everybody has frustration, upset, but you really live that center of gravity at the high end that uplifts you. Or is the center of where you spend most of your time on the low end? Where would you give yourself 0 to 10? And finding the empowering meaning and finding the uplifting emotion. Your emotional life, where you live consistently, is the quality of your life. You can talk about things, but we're emotional creatures, and what you feel is the quality of your life. Third area of life that's really, really critical is relationship. You gotta master this, not dabble in it, or you're gonna have pain. And by the way, I believe relationships are life. I mean, think about it. What are the most important relationships in life? Your relationship with those you love, your relationship with your creator, your relationship with yourself. If you had to do an inverted pyramid of importance, where the peak of it, the most intense part of it, the base of your life, what relationship probably has the ability to give you the most pain or pleasure in your life? Anybody know? Your intimate relationship. Because that's the place where your deepest fear that you're not enough or you won't be loved can be most powerfully impacted. Many people say, my kids, but the truth of the matter is your kids are a more certain love. In fact, many people have children purely out of the idea that then they can't get away. They're gonna love me because they're dependent upon me, they're my blood. But of course that can change too as they go through different stages of life. But if you're thinking about your intimate relationships, where would you score at 0 to 10? If you don't have one, it's called 0. Okay? Where would you score, for example, your family relationships, the next really powerful element? Where would you score going below that? Friends. If you don't score well on friends, you really are screwed. Because that's the easiest category. Because with friends, you give them the most latitude, don't you? You have the fewest rules. You have much more rules for your lover or for your husband or your wife than you ever do for a friend. That's why the friend seems to do well. They have less rules they can break. And then finally, your coworkers or associates. If you had to amalgamate that, but giving the highest value to the intimate relationship, next to family, right, then friends, then to others, what would you give yourself a score on 0 to 10? And again, this is not my standard, this is yours. Your idea of what a 10 would be in all relationships versus where you really are. Where would you put yourself? Write it down so you're honest. Fourth area, the mastery of time. Time. And here's just a simple way of thinking this is, does time use you or do you use time? Can you perfectly manage your day and achieve every outcome, every activity, cross off all your to-dos, and still be unfulfilled by that day, yes or no? And most people, what they tend to do is confuse movement for achievement. What you want to be able to be clear about here is, are you able to use time to get what it is you want out of it? In fact, what is time? Think about it. What is time? Here's what time is. Time is emotion. It's a mental construct, but the way we know it is through emotion. Think about it. A long time can be a second if you're really miserable, right? A minute. And how many of you have been in a situation where some hours went by and it was like minutes? You didn't even notice the time. What we call it time flew. Think about it. When time flew, what happened? You were enjoying yourself. You were fulfilled. But time is emotion, the mastery of it. What would you give yourself 0 to 10 right now? 10 is absolutely where you want it to be. Time serves you. You don't serve time. 0 is, my God, it's pure stress. Fifth area of life, I think you got to master, have an extraordinary life. Now we get to the part most of you talk about, your job, your career, or your mission. And when I say job, career, or mission, in that fifth category for you, think of it this way. Think of which one is it for you? Is it work? Is it career? Or is it a mission? I know by which word you selected the level of stress that you have. Because if it's work, I know it's painful, right? If it's a career, it might have some pain, but there's a different level of fulfillment because you start to attach it to identity. If it's your mission, it's beyond you. If it's your mission, it's about serving beyond yourself. And when it's your mission, it's something you love at a different level than you could ever love a career. You can only love something that's giving to you so much. Here's the mentality to think about it. If business is a spiritual game, then it's really falling in love with those you serve. Now, when you have that mentality about your customers, I promise you, you'll get raving fans. I promise you, you'll come up with answers. When it's a career, which many of you have an enterprise, but it's really a career, it's a big job. You wouldn't call it that because it feels good to be the entrepreneur. But if you ever stop working, it's over. And you're really trying to make the business meet your needs. That means it's a job or it's a career. If you can get it where it's a system that's truly about serving the customer's needs, that will be something you can eventually exit because it isn't totally dependent upon you. You may not want to exit it. You may keep the business forever, but you could because you've created something that adds massive value and is constantly meeting the needs of customers because it's based on a love for them. Think about it from that mindset. Where would you score yourself right now, where you are versus where you want to be? 10 is exactly where you'd want to be in your career, your job, your mission, your enterprise. 0 is dead. You haven't even begun the process. Or it's the worst. It's worse than you ever dreamed of. Give yourself a score based on your standards. Next piece for you, of course, is economics. And notice we got the economics at number 6. Not because it's not important, Economics is very important. If you don't think it's important, how many found out it's important when you didn't have any economics? Right? And most arguments in relationships very often will revolve around economics. It's not because of economics, though, you'll find out if you study relationships. It's based on values. It's based on not failing a connection. But those will be the surface arguments. So we got to master this area of our life, and this is part of that science of achievement, right? Very important to do. But if you make that number one and you pass up your body, your emotions, and your relationships, and your time, what will the quality of your life be? You'll be a terrible manager of your life and maybe a great manager of your enterprise. You need to make sure you're good at both. Life's got to come first. That's why we're taking the time to review this briefly, okay? So where would you give yourself a 0 to 10 on your finances? Where you are versus where you want to be? And then finally, the seventh area, which I put at the peak because I honestly think it's the most important area of all, because this is what gives our life meaning. And if you want to know how you have long-term happiness, it's finding a sense of meaning, something that is beyond yourself. And the seventh area I call C&C, which means contribution and celebration. How masterful are you in your life at making sure that you truly are each day feeling a sense that you're contributing beyond yourself? When people, for example, only do things for incentives, they only do it because they can make money, or they only do it to get what they can get out of a situation, eventually you feel not like a horse trader, but if I can use the aggressive term, a whore. Because a whore is someone who only gives you love if you pay them. And so I'm using that word to be excruciatingly bizarre, intense, to kind of jolt your nervous system. But that's what you feel like. When you only do things for money and that's the only reason you're doing it, there's no way you can feel good about you. Very often businesses make the biggest mistake. They keep incentivizing people, and that's the only form of motivation. Well, can you get somebody to do anything if you offer them enough money? Not everybody, but most people, yeah. But that person has no pride. That person has no fulfillment, and then the next time they want more money to do it. There's only so much money a business can offer. The deepest drive within a human being is a sense of meaning. A sense of meaning comes from growing and giving. The only way you're going to be fulfilled is meet those final two human needs. You got to grow or you don't feel alive. You got to give or you don't feel alive. That's part of what life is about. Some people, though, are great at contribution, but they're not great at celebration. And after a while, their brain gets tired. They're doing well, they're succeeding, they're contributing, but they never stop to celebrate because we live in a culture where, you want to be appropriate all the time. Some incredible thing happens and you play it down, because you don't want somebody to be envious or you don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. But if you don't really stop and celebrate, it's like watching a parent. I see this all the time. You'll see a parent and they'll go, well, my son, my daughter, they have it so much better than I ever did. I mean, they've got opportunities like I never had. I've helped to create all this for them. And they're pissed off about it instead of celebrating. Celebrating what you've contributed to your family. Celebrating that you've helped to create this base for them to launch from. Without celebration, life is empty. Where would you give yourself? By the way, some of you might say, well, I'd give myself high on contribution, but low on celebration. By the way, if you celebrate all the time, but you don't really contribute, the celebration's empty, isn't it? Where would you merge these two? What would you give yourself 0 to 10 if you were to merge these two?